This young man spawning in the bottom right of Curious Minds as the red Protoss is standing in his way. It is MaxPax.
And in the top left-hand side, bow to thy king. It is Lambo.
I'm just thinking about players in the past that kind of remind me a little bit of MaxPax, because he can be so frustrating to play against, because if he knows something's good and he is so good at executing it, he will just do it regardless. And during that time where, you know, you couldn't stop a Protoss from getting to that late game, he would do it every time without fail. And he was so damn good at it. And it made it so frustrating that almost Happy-esque in a way, where they stick to something. Maybe? Very possibly, like very build orientated in that they were so good at the execution as well that it just made so much sense to go for that when there's no super hard counter to it. But yeah, he did go for the hatch block here on Curious Minds, and of the maps in the pool, this is definitely one that favors Zerg quite a bit, given how open that third is, which yeah, it's a hard one for Protoss to hold these days.
Yeah, for sure. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, like the reason I say Naniwa or something like that is because he will have the execution and he will do the same build orders, but at the same time he comes up with his own style and figures out the game on his own at his own pace, right? So MaxPax is definitely a very interesting player, a very good mix of creativity and iteration and just like mastery and getting good over time. So really fun to watch him play and see what strategies he has been developing, because they will usually be stellar here. And this map, Orochi map, it's not an easy map usually for Protoss in the matchup. The third is very wide open, Benny. So yeah, let's see how he solves for it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we saw Lambo fold Serral in the winner bracket, but Lambo also played a unusual style that he was really trying to catch Serral off a bit, and you saw him falter mentally a little bit by the third game, which, you know, was unfortunate, but sometimes that can get the better of Lambo, but it didn't at all, actually, because his last match, he beat Ratatat 3-0, Ratatat formerly known as Vanya, and that's no easy match, but that was a nice way for Lambo to get back on track, I feel, right before this game, and didn't reveal anything of his ZVP either.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like in the match against Serral, maybe Lambo kind of like had it in his game plan, in his mind. Serral is or doesn't traditionally like the Muta and just try to, you know, gonna try to abuse the Muta. He's not generally the type of player that all-in, Serral that is, and that tries to punish a Muta-going player. And he was right about a lot of those assumptions. It just didn't seem to matter, right? Like Serral was just that good on that day.
Yeah, he was super good on that day. And here we have MaxPax already got his Squirlight done. He is going to go for a Glaive build here. 3 more gates on the way. Robotics facility in production as well. I like that. I mean, this map is fairly short, and seeing that you've already made your opponent take the more forward base to you, as in not the hatch first with the hatch block, this is just a very nice standard follow-up, and it allows you to really dictate the pace of what happens afterwards as well. If your opponent isn't holding it well, you go full ham. If they're holding it well, you can still transition out of it.
Yeah, for sure. Lambo with that 330 Roach Warren, so he is very much anticipating this. Again, we're expecting like the DRG implemented response, which is going to be to make a bunch of links for the first shading and then transition into the Roaches for the second, as the second Adept Warping also shows up. So this ideally is hitting at around 430 or so on the Protoss side of things. There is the Warp Prism already out, which is going to warp in the additional 3 Adepts. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty, or the additional 4 Adepts, excuse me. So it's a pretty standard build order, pretty classic. It's actually hitting at a very good timing here. And MaxPax is known at this point in Europe by the top European players to like this type of style on the shorter maps. So Lambo should be prepared here. But we've seen MaxPax also play like to his image, I guess, in certain other maps where he will have different transitions. So I think we'll see a lot of Adept openers. Here's the first one, and it goes straight into the ramp. That wasn't enough links being made from Lambo, as he already transitioned straight into the Roaches. That means that the Adepts are going to have an easy time maneuvering for the most part. Lambo now flooding links a little bit later than most Zergs would, and in that process, Benny, he's already had to evacuate 1 drone line, and he is looking to take losses elsewhere. So not a great start, I would say, for Lambo.
No, and you lose a Queen at that third as well, loses a few drones here, there, and everywhere. I mean, the drone count loss, still not that bad for Lambo. Overall, resources lost have very similar between the two. Did you see MaxPax focus the spawning pool for a few waves as well? That was definitely maybe a little bit of nerve showing, but Lambo survives, and the Adepts have to go home. Not the biggest commitment from MaxPax. He is sent up third behind it, but I think overall, pretty damn even, I'd say. Although Lambo is kind of reading that maybe there's a DT follow-up, and you have to respect that.
Yeah, and I think you might be right, Benny. Like, I think that MaxPax had a lot more potential for damage, but ends up not doing that much. But at the same time, he didn't really commit to further just warp-ins, right? So he's not super committed, like you were saying. And if we look at the worker count, he's actually 47 to 44, and there was a little bit larger of a gap even before now. So Lambo did make a lot of units and is now transitioning into an economic game, whereas MaxPax did already take his third and will be looking for a fourth, I'm sure, in the vicinity of time. So yeah, I don't hate his position, but I think you're right. I think this could have been better for MaxPax.
Yeah, right now, third is pretty much done for MaxPax, and he does have Adepts with Glaives to defend against those Ling run-bys. I guess one thing he has to be very careful of is these Adepts, they're not the greatest unit as the game goes on. They don't really stack that well together. Zealots are obviously much better, and he's going for Blink Stalkers behind this. Obviously a bit worried about like a Roach Ravager attack, which Lambo's Eco is getting up and running.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a very interesting follow-up push from MaxPax. Lambo running into the third. There's going to be a sentry there to buy time, but it's actually going to miss the force field. And on the other side, MaxPax is going to have to do a lot because he's going to lose a lot at his third right now. The two Adepts at the triangle third of Lambo are not going to accomplish much. The Immortals are kind of gated from those Queens already, which means these Immortals are not going to be able to contribute to the fight with the Adepts. And all of a sudden, Lambo with a huge advantage, in my opinion, as far as these exchanges are concerned. Maybe it would have been wiser for MaxPax to just pull back, or at least have the whole of his attack together, right? So that the Immortals can actually handle the Roaches and the Adepts don't have to run into those. But it is not looking so great for the Dane anymore.
It certainly isn't. Let's have a look at things all said and done. 54 pros versus 61 drones. Supply definitely in favor of Lambo, as it should be. But yeah, missing that force field, that was pretty huge. MaxPax, you know, he's a young player, not super damn experienced, but he's experienced enough that these mistakes, very uncharacteristic of him.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, there should have been maybe a warp in ready to go, and that force field should have bought him time. I mean, it's difficult to blame him because if we look at the situation, when he moves out, there's going to be the shortest timing window where Lambo can actually exploit his setup before the shield battery is up. Then you have shield battery overcharge, and all of a sudden you end up losing much less, if anything at all, to a Ling Rumbai of that caliber, right? So from MaxPax's perspective, Lambo hits at pretty much the perfect time, but at the same time, it's, you know, the perfect time to hit. It's like what you could expect of your opponent at this level of play. So yeah, maybe a little bit of nerves, and yeah, that attack did not pay off. He's gonna try to recover by the looks of it, Benny, by going into maybe Disruptor attack, and I think that would be the right choice here, a million times over Colossus.
Oh yeah, I mean, with that amount of Roach Ravager Colossus, people often look at it, they're like, hey, it will always do damage, right? And yes, but if they constantly have to move because of the bios, they can get pounced on. This army's very robust as well, and obviously takes no real extra light damage. Not even the Banelings, they're not light armored, just biological. So yeah, hopefully Disruptors will be on the way for MaxPax. And he's finishing up that +1 weapons, and economically, he's not in the worst shape, but yeah, he knows something is going to be coming pretty damn soon, I feel.
Yeah, it is this map as well, and he has the open third too,
oh,
right?
It is
so and that is surprising, and I don't like that. Just simply because, like you said, like consistent damage output, I think is not gonna cut it on the side of MaxPax. I think he needs to kind of take a risk. If he wants Colossus, he's gonna want a couple out. He's gonna want force fields to go with it, which he does have 3 sentries. He's gonna be working out in the open, which is not great for Colossus nor Disruptors, to be fair. And he's gonna want that thermal lance before anything even happens. But Lambo's more likely than not to hit before thermal lance, before there is 2 or 3 Colossus out. And even if there was consistent damage output against Roaches, it's, like you said, a very robust army, whereas Disruptors off of creep will allow you to survive, and you should be looking right now, above all things, to survive, not really to push or anything like that, right? So let's see what happens here as the attack is now enclosing onto MaxPax. There's going to be a shield battery overcharge, and the force fields are wonderful. The Colossus is getting zoned off for the time being, and Lambo is flooding from every which way at the moment. Benny, the Banelings will connect. Is it going to be enough? It's actually rather close. A beautiful blink forward, actually, from MaxPax, and somehow, some way, the Dane seems to be holding Benny.
I have no idea how he did that, actually. I was just looking at those force fields that he's replanting as soon as they were biled down. And I think Lambo is also probably very surprised at that. But the shield battery overcharge survived for so damn long there. And if we look at the resources lost tab, very close between them. But I tell you what, that Colossus that we both thought, hey, maybe not the best, definitely did its own little job as well, just on the right side. But the juggling with the Warp Prism on those Immortals and keeping them alive, I think that was so damn good.
Yeah, I mean, the Colossus has 3 kills to its name, so I don't think it did particularly amazing still. For me, what took that fight was, like you said, the shield battery for surviving the entire time, and the force fields were just perfect over and over again. We're talking about a very open map, wide open map, but Lambo did only come from one side of it, right? So that made it so that MaxPax could force field kind of effectively, and he didn't need to force field, you know, the whole 180 arc that you could potentially have to force field to prevent your opponent from coming in. And his force fields, again, were perfect. Then he defends the high ground with the stalkers, and that was a beautiful, very timely blink. The shield battery overcharge, full value out of that before any units fall as well, right? Like, because again, like if you get value out of it, but you only have like a few units remaining, then your damage output is not there in the hole. Here, it was his entire damage output being protected both by the shield battery and the force fields, and it was just a perfect defense.
This Warp Prism micro with the Stalkers as well, by the way, super clean. Like, he's actually managing to fight and pick off many units for free. He has to be a bit careful, though. These Stalkers, they don't have the backup that they're looking for. And Lambo kind of revealed his wraparound a little bit too early there.
Yeah, that was close, though, because MaxPax actually turned around to shoot at a few circlings. I thought maybe the wraparound was going to happen. Now Lambo's looking to collapse here, and the force fields are once again available, but again, very wide open scenario here, as now near the ramp, it's going to be a little bit better of a situation for MaxPax. But has he lost already too much on the retreat? It's not looking too hopeful. 3 Colossus, however, will have something to say. The next shield battery overcharge is here, and the banings have been mostly spent, but there's just enough to take that shield battery overcharge. Now with the warp inside the back, it feels like MaxPax should be able to push this back. But important to note, Benny, for the further engagements, there's not going to be any more sentries or those magical force fields to protect them.
No, and even though Lambo's, spending a lot to get damage done, he's also dealing a ton of damage here. I love that MaxPax, when he ran out of force fields, he started using the Stalkers to kind of blink forward and do that bit of tanking instead. But yeah, Lambo, he's kind of getting himself out of the woods here, like pretty nicely. He's up to tier 3 as well with that hive tech. Still trying to deal damage, and he's done such a good job of just slowing down MaxPax. And now Viper's in production, and that's just another problem for MaxPax.
Yeah, the first Viper on the way is going to be super annoying. Lucky for MaxPax, he did just finish the Templar Archives, but it feels like Vipers are a little bit more punishing, right? Like, because the feedback doesn't actually kill the Vipers, and the range is the same, which means if the Viper gets to stick its tongue out and pull a unit in, it is going to go in, even if the feedback goes right after it. So a lot of pressure onto the Protoss player to kind of play perfect and deflect those Vipers. Because if those Vipers get the abducts that they're looking for onto those very expensive units, your army loses so much of its firepower as a Protoss player. So it could get really nasty here. Let's see how fast Lambo can hit with those.
This is definitely some chunky boy army that MaxPax is rolling with, though. And like the Archons just make it that much more difficult to deal with. This maybe a little bit of a waste of these lots here, just trying to attack a Baneling Nest. But yeah, Lambo is expanding behind this. He's up to 5 bases now. The creep spread has been dealt with by MaxPax to a large degree, and his army is only 30 supply behind now.
Yeah, I think the Vipers were revealed by that poke from the Warp Prism, so there should be Templars on the way, because you really are going to want those feedbacks. You can't just afford to give up the Colossus. The other alternative is to blink forward with the Stalkers to pick up 1 Viper at a time, or just to set them far forward enough that they're not going to be an issue. But no, both Colossus get abducted right straight into the heart of the Roach Ravager army, and that is nasty to begin the engagement. One of them will retreat to safety, but the rest of them are all going to fall. And it's looking, Benny, like all of a sudden with that Viper timing, Lambo will be taking game number 1.
Wow, that felt like... It felt like MaxPax was doing a lot right in those little, or when I say little, those big engagements kind of in the mid stage of the game. But Lambo overall, he knew what his win condition was, and it was really utilizing that massively open battlefield outside that third base. And MaxPax, unfortunately, did not have those shield batteries still alive. They got wiped out in the last engagements. But yeah, just nice by Lambo. Like, it's always very good if you're a player and you know what it is your goal is. and it felt like he absolutely knew what his win condition was, and he just kept on going for it. So, well played by Lambo. Good, solid ZVP.
Definitely. He just kept peeling that onion that MaxPax was in that game. I mean, the sentries were no longer there for the force fields, right? The shield batteries, like you mentioned, like the infrastructure that MaxPax would have liked to fall back to, was no longer there. And yeah, I'm surprised still that given that we did have the Templar archives, that there wasn't really any High Templars being warped in just for the feedback. Obviously, Storm wasn't going to be available. I think that there was some obviously High Templars morphed into Archons, but none left in their original form, because protecting those Colossus, I feel like, was the only way that MaxPax could have survived. But all in all, a pretty back and forth game. I thought it started positively for MaxPax. Then Lambo kind of just stopped his next attack, right? And then Lambo just had a lead that he never let go of. But that first hold from MaxPax was so impressive. I felt like he was starting to crawl back into the game.
Yeah, there was definitely like a few errors from MaxPax. Like StarCraft 2 is such a fast and punishing game, so unforgiving. So if you spend a volley of 8 adepts hitting a sporting pool instead of, you know, moving or hitting Zerglings or drones instead, it's just like, wow, you're just losing out so much. And then that force field that was 1 pixel too high to save that gap kind of thing for the sentry. Like there's so many things that maybe could have altered it, but that's also very promising for the rest of the series, given that MaxPax is 0-1 down. And speaking of, spawning over in the top right of Glittering Ashes here, currently 0-1 down for System Gaming, it is MaxPax.
And in the bottom left, playing for the Shopify Rebellion, it is Lambo.
And again, that early scout with the probe, we know what that's all about, which is denying or hatch blocking the natural. Lambo sent out his drone rather early just to check if it was coming, and then makes his choice to go for the forward third very, very quickly.
Very, very quickly. This is a little bit of a turtley map. So maybe this is the one map where MaxPax could consider to go a little bit faster into those expansions, a little bit faster perhaps into air, even if it isn't the traditional routes that he would take. This is not necessarily a very adept-friendly map, but you never know. That's what I've seen mostly from MaxPax and his approach to this matchup is kind of just adepts early on. So we'll see if he chooses to do that regardless.
You're probably with me. We're still questioning that Colossus choice from him, given that, yeah, maybe he felt that something was coming, and then the initial push, it only had 3 kills. It was tanking a little bit, but those Immortals definitely did more. So maybe having that disruptor as well. That's one that I'll have to think about. Maybe it's his style. Maybe it's something that just feels more comfortable with. Who knows? Maybe he thought the Ling numbers were going to be higher. Not entirely sure, but it does definitely show me that MaxPax's micro is damn solid. Like these Blink Stalker squads with the Warp Prism and such.
Yeah, that engagement, I mean, the first engagement was just so masterful. It was like such a great defense, right? But at the same time, I mean, we were talking just the other day, Benny, about how Cyril like has this decision making sometimes where he knows what his limitations are to some degree, right? Like he knows I may be the best player in the world, but I can't be everywhere at once. And so he will take pockets of units and just kind of have him do stuff and trust them to do the right thing, or hold a watchtower or something that will give him easier access or an easier time, like following up with whatever he deems important at a given point in time, right? And MaxPax kind of didn't do that at a very crucial moment in the last game, where Lambo went in, he caused a lot of mayhem on his side, and that's when he missed the force field, etc., right, with the Ling Rambai. And MaxPax still decided to kind of execute his attack in the most complex way that he could. 2 adepts on the side, adepts into the main, Immortals at the front while defending. I feel like you're biting a little bit more than anyone can chew at that point, right? And so you're bound to make mistakes like attacking the spawning pool, like not paying attention to your adepts on the side and not getting all the damage that you could have otherwise gotten should there be less chaos going on.
Yeah, I wondered where you were going with that when you first started talking, but no, I'm totally with you, and a good point that you make, because yeah, that absolutely was a lot to be doing and trying to do, and losing like 13 workers for killing 5 or so at that point in the game, way more problematic for the Protoss player. So after that early engagement, like the first set of adepts got held decently by Lambo, that second engagement, yeah, the Zerg never goes into that stage of the game expecting to kill that many probes.
Yeah. So you really, you know, I think there was simpler options where you kind of gotta change your plan on the go and be like, oh, maybe I can't handle 3-prong aggression while defending a Ling Ram by after missing my force field, right? Like, and yeah, it was a little bit rough. It got a little bit difficult for MaxPax, but he played an incredible game when he had his attention in one window and he could focus on that. His micro was second to none, so I'm very excited to see what happens here. As once again, Benny, he's going to open up with a glaive at depth.
Yeah, Lambo was momentarily supply blocked then, but he does spot it very early with very good Ling scouting. And yeah, he's going to do that Don Ragu thing that you talked about, where it's a good number of Lings, then getting the Roaches afterwards. Right now, though, that's a scary number of Adepts that are showing up, and that Robo Bay behind this is so damn quick.
Yeah, the Queens are nearby, so the Adepts shouldn't go for the shade, even though there isn't that many Lings yet to cover the ramp fully. Because, yeah, the Queens are in a really good position here to cover 3 bases. So, like, one of the reasons this map maybe isn't the greatest for Adepts. This time we have another robotics bay. This time I really do expect Disruptors. And I will be disappointed otherwise, Benny, because, again, like, this Adepts will force out Roaches this time around, right? And you usually don't want to attack too fast against this sort of attack on the side of Lambo. So we see he's still on hatchery tech, which means no roach speed. And against no roach speed, then Disruptors become so much stronger, even on offense, especially when you already have your Warpersm out, etc.
Such a funny way of doing things. Like, he's now got the 3rd Nexus starting as well. And Disruptors starting, Gravitic Drive, that's a difficult one to say, is starting. Just pretty much everything. It's so difficult for Lambo to know exactly what he's up against, which is why we saw last game. It's like, all right, now I'm going to start the Spores in case there's something like a DT and what have you. But yeah, very difficult to play against somebody with the same opening, but a very, very different follow-up.
Yeah, and that is kind of the beauty of these Adept openings from MaxPax, and why he can kind of just do them over and over is because he has 2 or 3 different ways to transition out of them. And I really like this one. This approach in particular, I think, is very consistent with itself, like just strategically, right? But let's see what Lambo's going to be able to do here. Will he be able to get a cancel, Benny? A lot of Adepts are being warped in, so it's going to be close. I think MaxPax should be able to fend it off, but will he? As one of the Adepts is not shooting in the back, 2 of the Adepts not shooting, actually. 3 of the Adepts not shooting, Ben!
Oh my goodness. I mean, he's focusing too much elsewhere, isn't he? It will just stay alive, but I can't believe that with those Adepts not shooting that he managed to do that, actually. That is absolutely absurd. And Lambo, I feel like we saw this from Hellraiser, or later against Hellraiser, where the Nexus just stayed alive with a lot of Lings dying, and that is definitely a nice little victory there for MaxPax. Oh, look at that. He went 2 Disruptor into Colossus. I kind of like this way around of doing it, though.
Yeah, it's much better, I think. And again, like, this is going to be fantastic for the Disruptors, I think, just on offense. They should be looking for Roaches more than they're looking for drones, because the drones can kind of move out and move out of the way. I mean, so can the Roaches on creep, but there's not going to be Roach speed, like I was mentioning. So MaxPax can catch Lambo off surprise here, and he's certainly going to be looking for that. The Colossus follow-up is just going to be consistent. You know, damage output, but this time around he's not behind like he was last game, so I definitely like the Colossus a lot more.
Oh, I even like that he's doing this with the Adepts there. He's making life difficult and doesn't lose a Disruptor. That was very close, but this is where it's like, all right, let's do a couple of things here. Let's send Adepts into the natural and take a fight over here. You saw him handle that pretty damn well, and just a little bit of free damage almost. But Lambo, again, he's just defending well, man. Like, there's a reason he's a top tier Zerg, and so far he's not really missing a beat when it comes to not taking too much damage.
Yeah, I mean, these Orlets are going to be a little free, sadly,
yeah.
But yeah, at the same time, MaxPax is going to be taking a 4th base, which is really nice for him. And yeah, he has all the map control right now, right? Like, very difficult for Lambo to make a decision to move out before he has like the means to deal with Disruptors. And he is actually going straight into the Lurkers, but also with the Lurker tech, he will want to unlock Hive tech, which is the counter to the Disruptor in the Viper, right? So a cool approach here from Lambo, kind of not just saying, okay, I need Vipers, but also what else, what other value can I squeeze out of this Hive tech?
MaxPax is playing really fancy, man. Like, the way that he does this, I don't know how many Overlords he's picked off, by the way, but this is starting to become a real problem, like a good 8. So yeah, definitely resource-wise, it's been good for him. Lambo is getting to that hive tech though, with lurker tech on the way, and MaxPax supply-wise, I have noticed that he has been getting supply blocked quite a bit when it comes to these pylons, so he's not been able to pump out those big tech-heavy units. And Lambo is kind of poking at the front here and just being annoying.
Oh, being a little bit more than annoying now, perhaps, as he's actually gonna break in, but there is a cannon at the natural of MaxPax, so that's gonna be frustrating for Lambo, but MaxPax already accounting for perhaps some mishaps at some point, and as they happen, he's gonna be happy that he had that cannon to buy him time to get back to defend. But Viper's already out, Benny, on the side of Lambo, and that is really where it gets a little bit scary for a MaxPax that has primarily chunky units, or very super units, as you've called them before, in the shape of Colossus and Disruptors both.
Certainly are, and look at this. Very aggressive blinking, but I kind of like it, you know, because he knows that he's pushing right now. He knows he's pretty much, I don't want to say all in because he's on 4 bases, but this has to deal damage. Otherwise, he is certainly behind. Oh, I love this with the Adepts at the same time.
Yeah, and they're going to get into the natural unopposed. A lurker will have to burrow there just to account for those, as they will try to escape it by going into the main. Already 5 workers have fallen, and MaxPax does have the attention for the moment as he is moving his army to focus on those Adepts. So kind of like a great job of him, just kind of like, you know, like splitting the tasks. And now with Disruptors, we have one of the shots connecting. Another one will get abducted. I believe it did end up connecting, and two of the Colossus are in peril right now. One of them will get saved at the front. The other one could not, as it died to the abduct. And Lambo will hold comfortably after those Vipers make it onto the field.
I'll be honest, Cats. I thought this series was going to play out so differently with how well MaxPax has been microing and being nimble and nifty. But I really don't see this army composition working for him at all. Like, I'm just looking at a Zerg that's reached Hive Tech pretty much unscathed, and their army, like Lurker, Viper, just to me matches up so much better against this Colossus comp that he keeps going for. And the Colossus comp, yeah, just everything, every time that I'm seeing something, it just seems to be so much better for the Zerg.
Yeah, I mean, this was a masterful game, I think, from Lambo, just identifying what his openings were to go into that Hive Tech, to know that he couldn't move out, right, and still, like, make something of the situation. And, yeah, I don't think he took, like, enough damage, perhaps, early on. Like, the Adepts did okay. The Disruptors, you know, they basically just paid for themselves, and then the Colossus were basically not really a factor. So, yeah, MaxPax is gonna have to go back to the drawing board, perhaps, after this, Benny, because that quick of a Viper Tech was definitely a wonderful move from Lambo, and it seems to have paid off big time.
Certainly. I mean, Lambo, he can afford to lose this little squad over here because he's got bigger fish to fry, and that was a nice disruptor shot to start things off. And I say that, but Lambo has to go home with his tail between his legs here, but he is getting to a really damn scary army here. That is so many Hydras in production, even on his way to Aspire here. Double Evo for upgrades as well. And MaxPax, what can he do when it comes to moving out? Look how Lambo feels by the 19 drones at once. That's how confident he is.
Yeah, but at the same time, he, like, if we look at the work count before that, it was 72 to 80, right? So Lambo had a massive army. I think he had a big opportunity and maybe overcomplicates things for himself, right? Like kind of splitting his army in half there. So the big army of MaxPax takes down like the army of Lambo, half of the army of Lambo very easily at the front. And then on the other side, the Disruptor shot, it shouldn't be happening with 2 Vipers out on the field, with no Templars out on the field. It gets a massive Disruptor shot, enough to buy time for his army to get back and to hold off an attack that looked very, very difficult to hold. Should all the units be together? Should the Vipers be at the front, right? Like, how do you stop that attack if the Disruptors just get abducted and you have 190 supply or 200 supply against 120? Seems very difficult. So maybe Lambo giving MaxPax an opportunity, and here's another one.
Oh, that is definitely Lambo sleeping on the job a little bit there, being absolutely caught off guard by that Warp Prism. And Lambo's been maxed out for maybe, or at least close to, for the last minute or so. Whereas MaxPax, he's just been jumping up in supply. And I've been watching it too. He's had 3 Robos just pumping out Immortals. So what's he up to? He's up to 8 Disruptors, 1 Colossus, soon to be 5 Immortals as well, plus 3 upgrades on the way. I mean, his army definitely is getting to a point where it is powerful, but has so many Lurkers, man.
Yeah, 1 Disruptor almost connecting here. Now Templars on the field, like you were saying. Now Storm is available. So is feedback for the Vipers, which is going to make it easier for this Disruptors to actually find some damage. Though 2 of them will whiff their shots, which means MaxPax has to concede a lot of space, as Lambo has made his way into the triangle third base of MaxPax. The next disruptor shots are here, but that is a ton of lurkers that cannot be allowed to get in position here, Ben, as the next disruptor shot will connect them nicely.
These disruptors definitely doing quite a bit of work here. I mean, 15 probes do fall, so even if Lambo's attack does get stopped, I feel he's quite happy with this kind of trade, especially with the bank that he's accumulated behind this. He's even getting ready with his air transition here, if it needs, or if it goes the distance.
Yeah, for sure. Another disruptor shot is going to connect nicely onto these lurkers, but like you said, they have already done their job. There's no urgency for MaxPax to now reclaim this. Actually, I guess his other bases are under a little bit of threat, but he can afford to be a little bit more careful now, having lost all those probes and the real estate here at the triangle third.
Lambo's doing this very good, by the way. Like, every time a disruptor shot goes off. Oh, but a flank from the other side with those zealots will come and clean up those lurkers pretty damn nicely. Look how low health these disruptors are. Lambo knows it, and he snipes them in the last second. That was a lovely snipe.
Lovely snipe. As you were saying that the disruptors all exploded, I believe 3 of them. And yeah, I mean, the Templars were also kind of like in a lot of peril just walking into the lurker lines. So one of them or two, or I guess it has to be to morph into an Archon and are saved on the side of MaxPax, but definitely not the most ideal trades. And now he's going to look to lose another base here, which is not great for the Dane. Lambo with complete control of this game if we just look at the minimap as well.
Super control. Like, look at the worker count, 58 to 87, and MaxPax can't get any damage done on the other side of the map. And this army from him, it's good. It's a chonky boy army. But the thing is, Lambo just seems very well equipped at trading with it pretty damn well, while having a way better economy behind it.
Absolutely. I mean, the army of Lambo is as weak as it has been. Only 9 lurkers, and I say only because the count was almost at over double that just a little bit ago. So yeah, this is, I think, one of the better opportunities that MaxPax is going to have to try to make something happen. A little bit of the army of Lambo as well on the wrong side of things. So this base under a little bit of trouble, and this is a much needed victory in this stage of the game for MaxPax, should he be able to get it. But it feels like he doesn't feel like he can. Lambo, however, will he even let him escape? Let's see, as abducts will happen. One of the, make it 3 of the Archons are abducted, as well as the Colossus. But they are protected for the time being. 40 supplies fill the difference here, Benny.
Yeah, that was Lambo trying to make himself a MaxPax sandwich, and the sandwich fought back for a moment there. Nice disruptor shots, nice feedbacks, and storms landing, but MaxPax still has quite some space to go. Everywhere he turns, there's creep just surrounding him, and there's an angry German waiting to pounce at any point in time. Those are the F2 observers, most of them getting taken out there, and disruptor shots are still landing and buying MaxPax a bit of time here.
Yeah, so let's see what happens here as Lambo's trying to look for the surround, and he is going to get somewhat of the surround, but who's surrounding who? I mean, it's difficult to say right now. There is still a lot of technology here on the side of MaxPax to work with. There is still a lot of disruptor shots. There's still some Templars. What there isn't for the Dane is economy, longevity here, Ben.
No, there isn't. And Lambo, he's pretty rich, man. Like, you know, he's got, I was about to say, he's got a bit of supply to use here, but he just spent it all. 8 more lurks on the way. He's already at 8. He's also been pumping out those upgrades with that double Evo, so these range units are going to be at 3-3. That's just a massive deal. Even when it comes down to the Lings and stuff, just being able to survive against these Zealots just a little bit longer, working out to be better meat than they already are.
Absolutely. This disruptor shots will connect. So that is nice for MaxPax, but he uses 3 out of the 5 or so that he has on site. And that's going to mean that he has to chill for a little bit just outside of creep. At the same time, Lambo continuing to apply pressure onto the economy of MaxPax. These are valuable probes. Each one of these is difficult to replace on the side of the Dane. And Lambo now with a beautiful siege onto the cannon as well, which might allow him to push on further. MaxPax identifies this, and he is forced to pull back. Here come the disruptor shots, and they will land beautifully on top of all of those lurkers. And he deals with it fast enough that maybe if he can get to the other side of the map and save this base, there is still a chance for MaxPax. Maybe Lambo could have served himself better by running inside of the natural and like forcing the army to kind of be a little bit split, take a little bit longer to clear him, but it doesn't seem to matter. Here is the Vipers as well. They get the abducts before the Templars can make their ways to counter them with the feedback. And those lurkers, I mean, they're not going to be too reachable by Storm, but as I say that, MaxPax thinks otherwise, and he's going to push in. This could be the game-ending maneuver, Ben, and MaxPax with single G, make it triple G to end game number 2.
Lambo's playing really well. Like, you can't say anything else. He's playing really well. There's a few things where I can be like that little Twitch chat GM, like, oh, why didn't he kind of, space out the lurkers a little bit better so the disruptors weren't crazy? But overall, he did exactly what he had to do, right? Like, he was pulling MaxPax out of position. MaxPax wanted to be in his face and wanted to be aggressive. And MaxPax, or rather Lambo, knew, hey, I can defend you with this. I'm going to run by with this. I'm going to make your life difficult. I'm already ahead. And it was just like, I'm going to lean on you. He was like the movie villain where he's like torturing the good guy, basically, and just knew all the ways to make it as painful as possible. And by the end of it, MaxPax was just, he was wounded. He was wounded and he come back. And that last fight from Lambo as well, just a great concave with lurkers. Just really, really stellar play out of Lambo. I wish I could change my bet now.
I mean, yeah, he's up 2-0.
Yeah.
I think anyone who bet on a 3-1 MaxPax would want to change their bet at this point, Benny. But yeah, I'm with you. Except I think that Lambo's the hero here, Ben. No, why is he the villain?
I mean, I never. In fact, I got made fun of a long time ago by Roddy for talking about Alien versus Predator, and like, what about the humans? Where are they mentioned? But this is very much two villains in my eyes, and it's like right now not seeing Skytoss against Zerg with lurkers and stuff. I have to assume that the Protoss is the good guy there, as much as it feels very wrong now that I'm saying it aloud.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we all know the Protoss can't ever be the good guy.
Also,
the bottom right-hand side, go on, Benny.
Also, there's those guys on Reddit that tell me it's been umpteen years since Protoss won a tournament. Completely forgetting about Traps 2021, of course, but yeah, they go for it.
They go for it. In the bottom right-hand side of Berlingrad, it is the man leading 2-0 with excellent gameplay. It is the Shopify Rebellion's Lambo.
And spawning over in the northwest side, this is his last lifeline remaining. It is Psystorm's MaxPax.
Okay. Well, yeah, I should say. I mean, MaxPax has played, I think, a really strong game one on defense, and then the game number two, I don't know, it just felt like he kind of fell apart with the transition of Lambo. Like, I attribute most of that game just to how good the read from Lambo was and how good his transition and plan was, right? Getting to those lurkers and those Vipers simultaneously against the tech that MaxPax was proposing, which is something personally that I see and I really struggle with, and that is pretty frustrating for me because I'm like, oh my God, like I was just forced onto roaches and now I'm forced to, you're forced to deal with the disruptors without roach speed because you needed the roaches and the links in high numbers in order to, not die to adepts basically, or their potential, right? So Lambo just kind of finding every single step that he could in order to transition timely to those Vipers, and those timings really hitting them as well as he could to where he gained a huge advantage. But yeah, I mean, this game is gonna be a little bit different, I think, in the sense that Berlingrad, Benny, is probably the best map for early aggression for the time of pacing that MaxPax has been looking to set in this series.
Oh yeah, definitely. When I've seen a player, when it comes down to this serious of a match, which this one is really damn serious, I was going to say, I think we're going to see the same kind of opening again from him, but a Stargate here, I love that switch up, because so far Lambo has shown that he's actually very good against this early sort of aggression from MaxPax. And, the trademark of a good Zerg is their ability to survive with very little, but also being able to transition, as you said, and making the right calls and stuff. And Lambo's just been showcasing that he's very good at that.
Yeah, and the Stargate is not, it's not like it's a bad opener by any means, but it is a little bit confusing just given the map, right? Like, because again, adepts and just overall aggression on this map is going to be super strong. Stargate, usually the type of more defensive setup that you can go for. Like, usually you go for an early Oracle into a fast third, right? And then the Oracle accounts for all the links that can happen, and then you maybe take a very fast fourth. And we've seen the Stargate still used in these ways to transition into the hero style of Protoss, right? Into that blink, into that lower tier tech units of low gas intake, but mass expanding like a Zerg might. So We'll see what the approach of MaxPax is, as most likely the Oracle is going to park itself to finish this Overlord off and then cross the map.
Nice and early Twilight Council behind this as well from MaxPax, so we're not ruling out any sort of follow-up from this, and he's getting multiple gateways as well, so it could be something a little bit cheeky from him. But yeah, I was kind of wondering, because so far this Robo style has been pretty well dealt with by Lambo, so I was wondering what else does MaxPax have up his sleeve, and going for a nice early third with this as well. So far, I'm looking at this build, and I'm like, this has the trademarks of a very annoying to deal with Protoss build.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what his tech of choice is. If it's Blink, then I think that we're going to see, like, and it's not, right? Like, I think that I thought we were going to see kind of like what most pros have gone to, maybe the MaxPax version of that, but instead it's Adept Glaives. So it's going to be a late Glaive timing that is going to look to most likely catch Lambo off guard, right? He's been saying, okay, like, I've shown you my Adept build 3 times in a row. I'm going to do it again, but this time around, I'm going to kind of like, you know, like trick you in the process. And there was a Ling in the bushes from Lambo that actually managed to get out of vision before MaxPax could necessarily spot it with these Adepts, as they hadn't crossed the bush yet. So Lambo gathering a little bit of information. MaxPax doesn't know what information Lambo has gathered yet. And now MaxPax going into air attack. Benny, this is bananas. Is this Phoenix? What is this?
So I'm like, this is where I'm asking myself. I think he did that to try and throw Lambo off a little bit with the scouting, because Lambo's been very good about scouting the front continuously. So maybe wanting him to, but no, he is going to go into air, which I think that's really cool, because again, you don't see this kind of stuff all that often. But yeah, this is just pulling out the whole Protoss sync here, isn't it? Just doing a cool opening, 1 Oracle, didn't do that much, did a little bit, into Adept Glaives, not a seriously crazy amount of them either, but a very greedy follow-up.
Yeah, this is kind of like, in my mind, the epitome of what Protoss should try to do, but it is so difficult to actually pull it off. And we see the Adepts are actually going to shade in. It's going to be a few to the natural, some more to the third, but there's plenty of Link Bane here available for Lambo. He will shut this down. Only 3 workers have fallen to this huge investment, not just of the Adepts, but also of the tech to get to those glaives, right? Like, he has had to invest into the Templar Archives, or into the Twilight Council, and now into the glaives, into those Adepts, and he didn't find the damage that he was looking for. Lambo on the other side, he's gonna counterattack. Why not? You have the fastest unit in the game. You should have been expecting this if you're MaxPax, but what do you have to work with? Like you were saying, Ben, he's been extremely greedy behind it.
He's been extremely greedy, and Lambo just getting in there. But that was a nice hold, by the way, with those probes. He actually tried to surround his own shield battery. Didn't lose a single probe to that counterattack.
Wow.
So nicely done by him. He did have to reveal his Void Ray there, though, which, maybe Lambo thinks it was a panic Void Ray, but if he clicked on it and saw the +1, he's going to know that it isn't for sure.
For sure. And yeah, I mean, like, I really do like, on paper, what MaxPax is trying to do. I just think it's so difficult to pull off, right? Because he is kind of like twist and turning and keeping his opponent guessing. I think that Protoss is and has always been by design kind of the techie trickster race. If you don't know what's coming, then it's going to hit you that much harder in the face, right? And MaxPax trying to do that on multiple fronts here, starting with the Oracle kind of trick, right? Like killing the Overlord, and then kind of like twisting and turning, like I said, going into those Adepts. They didn't end up working, unfortunately, for him, but his next transition is already underway, which is this Void Race, right? So it's the 3rd twist that we see here in this game of a tech that you wouldn't expect MaxPax to go for, and it hasn't been flawless, but it could just be enough.
He's been doing a decent job of just kind of using Adepts continuously to deal damage. I'm just looking again, Kat, at this transition of Lambo. Like, there's carriers on the way, 3 at a time, and Lambo's just pumping out a ton of Hydra. He's getting upgrades, he's getting the Banelings as well. You might be like, Banelings? Why? Against carriers? Really good for taking out all the static defense and anything that can potentially deal with your Hydras, such as Zealots, Adepts, you name it. And Lambo's got a really damn good economy with all this. He's also realizing, hey, this game will probably go on a little bit. Let's get the Infestation Pit. I think Lambo's done a really good job of kind of cluing into exactly how to handle this.
Yeah, but does Lambo actually have the full information of what MaxPax is doing? I mean, he knows that there is a lot of defense at the 3rd, and he knows about a Void Ray and potentially about the upgrade as well. But does he know that there's 3 carriers on the way at a time? Because I feel like if he did, we wouldn't be seeing all these tech transitions, and instead we would be seeing a little bit more like what we're seeing. So yeah, maybe he does know. He is clued in, and he is just kind of like, you know, saying, okay, I'm not gonna all in with this. This is just gonna be a very, very strong push, and if it doesn't outright kill you, I will still have a strong transition to fall back to. So kind of like a plan A and B. There's lag, Benny.
Oh, this is not a good time to have lag, and referee, get out of here, son. But okay, I was just about to say, Cats, we can kind of pause for a little bit here. He's getting out Tempest 3 at a time. I actually love the Tempest call, because carriers very often in this kind of position, when you're against that much like anti-air, the interceptors, they'll get sniped out of the sky. So if you can get some Tempest together, and you know, it doesn't need to be a huge number. If he gets up to like 6 maybe, like he's eventually going to be able to whittle down this ground arm. He just can't take too much damage. And he has established 4 bases behind it all as well, which what a crucial point to just be like, oh.
Yeah. We continue as he drops. I've paused, says the observer. So yeah, we're just chilling here. I'm completely with you, Ben. I think that the Tempest is a great tool to kind of just stabilize over time. But how much can you bleed before stabilizing is the issue for MaxPax, right? Because I mean, Lambo has looked pretty good on defense this game, and he is looking to capitalize again on what we talked about is the shortest map in the map pool, and that is why he is able to bring these queens. That is why he's making this timing attack happen, and it is now resumed. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a miraculous hold if it happens from MaxPax. You were mentioning the Banelings. Banelink speed is now ready. They are going to be important to take down that static defense. The static defense, in particular, the shield batteries are going to be amazing for the carriers if they can get off the full duration, as they have a lot of HP to heal back up. And here comes the attack from Lambo. The initial wave isn't that great, but now the Banelings connecting onto a lot of those sentries. Now the static defense at the front has been taken down. Only 1 shield battery remains on the side, as our observer does a great job of catching back also the Rambies, where MaxPax is losing further amounts of probes to the side. Just even if he could hold this, he would be in so much trouble. Lambo already with a transition. Remember, Ben, this is not even an all-in, and it is looking much like a 3-0 at this point.
I mean, massively so. It felt like Lambo just did everything right this series, man. Like, I was really impressed with a lot of the moves that MaxPax did, but this was just a very one-sided affair, and if Lambo ever felt like, hey, of course I can beat MaxPax, well, he definitely displayed it today.
Absolutely, yeah. He did an incredible job. I think most of the games were won as well strategically. Like, I think if we saw like just like control and prowess, it was from the side of MaxPax like very often, though of course Sarg is a little bit limited on that front. But yeah, I think strategically Lambo played an incredible series, right? Like starting with those counters, with just kind of reading his opponent, and that is exactly what you want to do as Sarg, is know exactly what's coming and know exactly how to handle it and just react on the spot. And this was a great reactive series on the side of Lambo. He knew every step, he studied, he is amazing at preparing, and it has shown.
Absolutely, absolutely. And here, this is just these Tempests. You might be like, hey, he's getting free damage. Why doesn't Lambo back? I don't think he even needs to. Like, as long as he's killing interceptors and stopping his opponent from taking a 3rd base, because he's killed the 3rd and the 4th, he's even getting the Tempest kills here as well. And the supply for Lambo, it's not dropping. Look at the income tab. He's literally more than double against his opponent here. And yeah, he absolutely can hang around.
Yeah, and that is just the thing, right? Like, the Lambo also has transitions out of this. Like, you were talking about that infestation pit as the attack was happening, and I was thinking, well, do you really need the infestation pit if you're gonna make an attack happen, right? Or is the attack no longer happening, just gonna set up some defense, etc.? Lambo kind of could afford to do both. And I mean, that was kind of like the perfect read here, because his attack, not in full force, not as committed as it could have been, was plenty. And I think that if he committed, like, we would see just a straight up dead MaxPax right now. But hey, this is still kind of perfect, right? Because he's still gonna die. He's just gonna die a little bit later. And right now, MaxPax, I mean, he is completely starved. He can't even take a 3rd. Lambo already has 4 Vipers on the way. There is no use in doing the caster thing, Ben. There's just, you know, we're just talking to fill time, but this game is over.
Yeah, Lambo's really painted a picture of how good his EVP is here. And it's just been solid across the board. He knows when to be greedy. He knows when to be safe. And overall, like, this series, he didn't really have to cut any corners. Like, he didn't showcase that. He just showcased, as you said, very good tacticianally, right? Like, it was just all very solid. And MaxPax, it felt like not much ever really stood a chance. A lot of the cool moves were when he was kind of dying, and it's like, oh, he's still alive, and it's like, well, that isn't the best position to be in here.
Right.
That
was kind of the story. Yeah, it's like, wow, great hold. You're still alive.
Yeah, exactly. And here, Lambo's army is getting thinned out against this.
I mean, look at the supply,
fleet,
right?
but yeah, I mean, it's all ogre.
Yeah. So yeah, like the armies, you know, you look at them and it's like, oh yeah, like there's some sort of semblance of hope for MaxPax. That is an army that will give most Zergs like PTSD, but there isn't really AoE here. The Tempest output very slow damage, you know, like by the time Lambo could give MaxPax those Tempests like as fast as they can kill 2 or 3 bases, and he would still have, you know, plenty to answer here. So there's really 0% chance here for the Dane. He knows that, and he will finally tap out 3